Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carolyn Cole from the Shoveltown Cultural District, and I'm here today with one of our Artist on Display series with Greg Strange, who's a wood turner. And a lot of people have asked me, what's a wood turner? So the first thing I'm going to ask for Greg is to explain, give us a good explanation of what a wood turner is, and then he's going to show you some of the beautiful things he's created, and also give you kind of an explanation of what he does and show you how he does some of his work.
Hi. Well, thank you, Carolyn, for having me, or for coming on over. So, wood turning is a process by which you take a piece of wood and you basically spin it on a lathe on the horizontal axis, and very similar to almost a potter's wheel, but just horizontal versus vertical, and through that you can make. That's how, going back 400 or 500 years. They used to have old foot-powered trundle lathes where they would make, utilitarian bowls and candlesticks and balusters and furniture legs. So I don't know. I stumbled on this about 5 or 6 years ago. I've been a builder and an architect, and I was just buying some new tools, and a gentleman over in Brockton at Beaver Woodwork was trying to get rid of a lathe and had a good deal on it. And I said, well, what do I want to make baseball bats for? Because that's kind of what I always equated a lathe with. And he said, no, that's how I make bowls and bases. And I thought, well, that's kind of cool. I've always kind of been fascinated with how things are made, and like I said, I always wanted to spin some clay on the wheel, so it was kind of the same thing. So long story short, I bought the lathe, and 5 years and about 3,000 bowls later, and 600 species of wood, I'm hooked. So I like to. When I first got into it, I would start using like exotic woods from around the world, because there were some colors or grains or species you hadn't seen. Then you realize actually how unsustainable some of those crops are harvested. So I stopped that, and I started to learn more about some of the local woods here, some of the native woods we had, and some of the tricks you can do to bring out some of the character. For example, this is a piece of box elder that I got off the old foundry property up on Route 106. Tree had come down. That's how I get most of my stuff, is sort of storm damaged trees. And the box elder tree is called that way. Back in colonial days, they thought it looked very similar to boxwood in England. And even though it's a maple tree, the leaf looks very similar to elder, so hence the name. And there's a beetle, the box elder beetle, that goes into it, and you can see there's a little hole here, and it's the only tree that it'll go in the world. And what that does is it causes all sorts of red staining. This is from the same tree, so you can see some of the red that got in there. And this piece here didn't have as much red staining in it, but it also spalts very wood. And spalting, that's these black lines. I don't know if the camera picks up, but here's the growth ring, so that this would have been in the tree this way. So as the wood starts to decay, fungus gets in there and kind of sets up a zone, and that's what each one of these black lines. It's almost like a stone wall, and it's ironic because it's a mineral too. But so it can give you some really nice funky lines in there and add some character. So, anyways, that was the longest sentence in history. But so I'll take this wood sometimes. It might be plain, and I'll stick it out in the mud, and I'll pour a little beer on it, because yeast will help it along, and put it in the shade for a couple months, and this one didn't spalt all that spectacularly, but adds a little bit of character. And then some of the other things I do. Sometimes I'll just turn a plain shape. This bowl has an interesting story to it. A couple years ago, I was over talking to Frank Menino at the museum, the Historical Society, at the railroad station, and I noticed on the Governor Ames estate they were doing some tree trimming. So I said, I'd like to get some of that wood. So I called maybe Fred or Bill Ames, and said, guys, you mind if I go over and grab some of the logs? So I grabbed. There was this unusual tree that it smelled like a pickle, which was strange, and it was really yellowy green, and it had really strange bark on it. And it ended up being, through some research and a little help with Stephanie Danielson at Town Hall, we discovered that it was cork oak, which is the tree that cork comes from, which is, it's native to Spain and to Portugal. and it ended up being, we learned through the Arbor Day Society, it was the most northern cork oak ever found in North America. So anyway, so that was neat. I was able to get 5 or 6 bowls out of it, and this is the last one there. And has the grain of a regular oak tree, but it has a slightly different color. So that's that. And then sometimes I'll take, here's an elm tree that I got out of the town forest, which elm's pretty unusual to have growing around here, but this is a slippery elm. And I had a plain grain on it, and I just wanted to wake it up a little bit, so I as I turned it, I cut some grooves in it, and I used a piano wire, and the heat from the friction burns the wood, and then I came back with a little wood burner and just detailed it. And this is similar. This is another one, plain little bowl, a little poplar tree, and I just used the wood burner to follow the grain there. And the jury's still out on that one. I don't know if that's successful or not yet.
Can you tell me something about this piece?
Sure.
It's very unusual.
This was this came out of Borderland, and I thought I had. Let me show you. This is when I keep referring to burl. If you've ever seen on the side of a tree, almost looks like a big wart or a tumor or something. That's a burl, and those are caused by a number of reasons. It can be caused by a gunshot, a bullet that was stayed in it. It can be caused by a woodpecker. Sometimes just a virus, or sometimes it's a place where maybe 2 branches were rubbing against each other, and it's basically the tree. It's kind of the scabbing over of the wound, and what happens? The tree will send all this energy to that area to grow quickly. Over time, still takes 10 or 20 years to grow, but a lot quicker than the tree. And what that'll do, that creates a really crazy, just wonderful grain pattern in there. Burls. There's many different types of burls, and they're certainly desirable. They're on the dashboards of cars, a lot of furniture, Grandma and Grandpa's piano. But so this would have been on the side of the tree, and this was the bark edge of it, and it was just, I knew the elm burl is kind of an open burl. Has kind of a rustic look, so that's just kind of the look. Instead of giving it a refined look, I thought I'd keep the bark on it, and very similar. Here's one I got. This is a tree I got off of Mill Street. It was just a plain sugar maple burl, and didn't really have any spectacular eyes or grain pattern. So I, just for the heck of it, I dyed it. This was the last year. I had 30 of these. They were very successful. I did them all different colors. So this is the lone survivor. We'll have to come back, and we'll have to make some more of those. But yeah, the natural edge I enjoy working with. For example, these are Australia. These are some Australian burls. The eucalyptus trees in Australia create about 3,500 different species of burls. Everything from greens to browns to reds. This is one of my favorites. This is called gimlet burl, and you can see all these voids in it. These are actually resin pockets, and here's a good example. This is from the same type of tree, the same species. This one was in a very lush area in a valley near Brisbane, and you can see you get a nice. This has a nice brown color to it, tight eyes, nice pattern, but no resin. This was out in a more arid area. This is out towards the desert in Western Australia. And what it does, it gets very little water in that area. What little water it gets, it stores in resin inside the sapwood of the tree, and then it lives off of that. And so the deeper you get into the tree, these pockets are still filled because that's what the tree is living off of. But when you get to the outside, so it gives a real, it's a very unique pattern. Not for everybody, but I like it. I have a lot of people. I do a lot of shows on the East Coast, and a lot of people come up and ask me, like, is that coral? Or, so it's nice, but the downside of that is very expensive too. So it's Australia gives you all sorts of wonders. These are Banksia tree seed pods. Very similar if you've ever been down south in the United States, similar to a magnolia tree seed pod, and these would have really bright orange seeds. What's interesting with these, the seeds will only germinate if triggered by fire or triggered by heat, the fire. So some of these end up being 20 or 30 years old before they drop. And the result is this really kind of unique. I call them coffee bean vases because it's sort of what they look like. You know, as you get through this skin's like an armadillo, so hard, and then there's this furry level.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, and then you get in the middle, and like I said, the coffee bean level. So I make lampshades out of those, and napkin rings, and a lot of vases, and it's interesting. 7 people a year actually lose their life to getting hit because these are all over the place in Australia.
Oh, wow.
And they just fall, like our pine cones. But you can see they have
The weight.
quite a bit of weight to them. So, anyways,
Do you want to show us something on the lathe? Or?
sure. Show you how it's done. So the process, I'll step back for a second. People always say, how do you do it? So you start with a log. It's ironic I don't have a log around here, but here's a piece. This is one of the cedar trees, or juniper trees. That was actually one of the ornamental trees around the reflecting pool of the Italian garden.
Yes.
Up at Queeset, the original one. I made sure I pulled these out of the dumpster when they're done. But so you can see, here's the growth ring. So here's the tree.
Yep.
So I'll cut that out and try to avoid the middle, the pith of the tree, because that'll always split. And then on the bandsaw, I'll cut it in a rough round shape, just so it's a little easier. And then I'll mount that on the lathe, which we can take a look at now. And then I'll end up with something, sort of like this. And the wood's always a little green, so you rough turn it about 1 inch thick. You let it dry for anywhere from 3 to 12 months, depending on the species, or if it's in order. If I have a commission, I need it quick, I'll pop it in the microwave. Not the one in the kitchen. Don't tell Kevin. Excuse me. And then so that'll distort a little bit, and then I'll take it to its final shape, and then apply some finish. So that's from the same seed. That's one of the trees from Queeset. So let me throw on a smock here, and I'll quickly spin one. You learn early on to wear one of these as a wood turner. Otherwise, you get wood chips
Everywhere.
everywhere. So, okay, this is actually a neat little piece of honey locust burl. Only one of 2 people in the United States that have this. And I actually got it on eBay. I didn't realize how valuable it was at the time, and luckily neither did the gentleman who sold it. But it has some unique colors in it. So, basically what we're going to do is we're going to you can see this thing, I've kind of rough cut it just so it's a little quicker, and we're just going to spin it around at about 1,000 RPMs using a couple different tools here, and we'll bring it into shape, and on the outside we'll round it off, and then we'll try to make one in the middle. While I rough it, I'm going to bring up this tailstock just to hold it. Is that okay? Can you still see? Not blocking it too much. There we go. Kind of lightly go in. First thing I'm trying to do is just kind of rough it out and get it round, and then take a look at it. See what kind of character the wood has. I usually wear a full face shield, so forgive me as I spit out some wood. And so now I can see there's a nice pocket of red coming out of it, so I'll try to highlight that a little bit. So sometimes, this has a lot of bark in it, so sometimes you don't quite get to do what you wanted with the shape. Kind of the wood kind of dictates it. We'll see if we can get something nice out of this. All right, I'll try to get inside now. Square off the top. This is a really unusual shape, but this is for demonstration purposes. I'll try to grab a little bit in the middle, and then I'll pull it off and show you what we got. Created the outside shape, or a rough one anyway, so now I want to kind of hollow up the inside. This will be the abridged version of wood truck. Hope it wasn't too dusty. Usually I have a big dust pressure. But, so, I won't make you sit through the whole hour and a half production, but, so this was, it's an interesting piece. I mean, it has some nice colors in it. There's some grays and some pinks, and this will probably, something like this, I'll probably make a covered box out of it. As I got into it, there's an awful lot of bark inclusion, which sometimes you'll get in burls. And it was a small piece to begin with, but I'll kind of refine the shape. I was just trying to show, and then normally what I would do, I'd go in here and, hollow it all the way out.
It's actually amazing because when you think of it, it's, we see a plain block of wood, and you see a lot of that we'd never see, and it's brought out with the lathe. A lot of interesting colors.
Oh, sure. And so often, people ask me, excuse me, the dust. I'll take a piece. I may have an idea that okay, I want to, I kind of, but you can just put it wherever. I may have an idea, but then you get into it, and the wood. Sometimes it might be something in the grain, or actually, interesting. This piece of zebra wood. This is a good example. One of my favorite woods to work with. Zebra just has this really contrasting grain. So sometimes, as I said, this has kind of become a second job for me. So sometimes I'll have a show, I have to get ready, and you don't feel like doing it. Gotta come out, gotta make a bowl, gotta make bowls. So I'm out here trying to make 10 or 15 pieces last year for a show, and so I think I'll make a piece of I'll make a zebra bowl, and just a shallow little bowl. So I had it mounted on there, and I know the shape I want. And sometimes you just cut things differently, just to get rid of the monotony. So I just kind of went with this tool, this straight tool I had, and I looked at it. So as you can see, kind of the grain on it sort of had this kind of pixelating effect. And so I call that my Devo bowl, and now this is what, Devo bowl number 18. So I sold every show now. I think every show I've done since then, I've sold at least one. Because it just has that kind of neat effect. So, sometimes you just don't know, exactly what you want to make, but it doesn't always come that way. Because, sometimes it'll fly off the lathe, or, it'll break, there's a crack in it. Or you know, like you say, you know, like this one, the colors, I think I kind of kept the belly on that because with all that gray, you know, it has some nice, has some potential. But yeah, that's the fun for me. That nothing, you know, yeah, you just a plain old piece of wood. But boy, it's amazing how much character some wood has. And
Well, this has really been an interesting and amazing afternoon, and it gives you a view, the viewer, of how many talented and different artisans and artists we have just in our area. I hope you'll come to our art show, which is free and open to the public on April 5th, Saturday, from 4 to 7, and you can see more of Greg's work and also the rest of some of our local artists. Thank you.